Welcome to See You at the Table, where stories meet grace. Here we gather, not just to speak, but to listen. If you want to witness how God brings people together from all around the world through powerful testimonies, tune in and see you at the table. Here's today's host. All right, guys, welcome back to the See You at the Table podcast. Today we have a super awesome special guest. I will let you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, it's Lisa Anderson. I am so privileged to be here at Spoken Chapel this morning and now getting to join you on this podcast. So it's my privilege.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you. Do you want to tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about what you spoke on today and sort of what you've been up to outside of speaking in chapel?
Yeah. So I came here from Colorado Springs, where I've worked for over a decade at Focus on the Family in public relations, and then lately with Boundless, which is our ministry to young adults. So I host the Boundless Show, our podcast, and have done that, believe it or not, for 17 years. Back when podcasting was just getting started is when we started. And then run boundless.org, which is geared toward helping young adults really grow up, own their faith, date with purpose, and prepare for marriage and family. So moving into all aspects of maturity, which I love to talk about. And so we kind of talked about relationships this morning in chapel in terms of what does it look like to go after growth and maturity and intentionality in all relationships, including your relationship with God, with other people, growing, and then even dating and pursuing marriage.
Yep. This is all sort of stuff that's been on the forefront of my mind because I'm a senior in school, and I feel like everybody right now is getting engaged and married and having kids. I think we joke about in Christian school, like ring by spring.
Yep.
And so it's kind of been funny to look around and like all my friends are like dating, getting engaged, and I've just been pursuing other things. Not really been worried about finding sort of a mate or anything. Just kind of thinking if one comes along, they come along. How do you sort of feel about that? What's your opinion on sort of looking for someone, or should you just let God bring the person in your life?
Sure. Yeah, well, I kind of had the same story in that I went to a Christian school in Chicago or near Chicago and spent 4 years of tuition to come out single. So I'm like, did I get my money's worth? I'm not totally sure because I thought for sure I'd meet someone. That said, I think what I've learned since then, and I'm still single, is recognizing that there's an intentionality to pursuing dating and marriage. And so we have a place in that plan, and we can't just sit back and wait for it to hit us like the flu. I mean, I think too many, we see even in scripture where, people went to wells to find their spouses. People waited for, God to point certain people out. They went through family connections, all the different things. So there's a measure of intent to that, and we do have a role in that. But we also have to be open-handed and let God have his place in the process too. So it's kind of the perfect balance of not freaking out and feeling like, oh, why hasn't God brought anyone to me? What am I doing? Am I wasting time? All of that. It's like, hey, it's cool. Go about being who you are, doing all the things, getting your own life in order. But then also, if you want to be married, let people know you want to be married. Be willing to ask people out. Be willing to take dates and go on dates and get to know people. And I think that's the process that God usually uses to bring people together.
For sure. I think one thing lately, I kind of follow a lot of like Christian influencers, and I think sort of the idea right now is women should be like sort of stepped back and the men should always be the ones like asking first and pursuing them. What do you think? Do you think it should always be the guys asking on a date, or do you think young Christian women could also be saying they're interested, asking people out? What do you think?
It's funny you ask that because I feel like that was something I kind of was angsty about when back when I was a young adult, and then I hear it a lot from young adults now. And I guess I'll say, okay, no, so women, none of you are going to hell if you ask a guy out on a date, okay? This isn't like in the Bible of you are shooting yourself in the foot or this is the worst tactic ever. That
Levitical
said,
law.
That said, I do appreciate, and I think there is a great precedent for and biblical even leanings toward men taking a position of ownership and leadership in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you how this works practically. So I have a number of friends now who are married, and they will gripe about their husbands like, he won't make decisions, and I can't even get him to choose pizza toppings, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what was he like when you were dating? And they're like, well, he let me make most of the decisions, and I kind of liked it because I wanted to take charge and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why did you expect him to change then just because you got married?
Yeah.
So the way I summarize that is absolutely. Like, ladies, there is, opportunity available to you to indicate interest, and there are appropriate ways of doing that. But I always say to women that if you date a guy who is passive and lame, you're probably going to marry passive and lame. So you have to be willing. Now, that said, women, you can get catty and crazy. So you have to back up and give men space to lead in the way that God has called them to lead. And it may not look always the same way. So we have to be ready for that. Well, then women say, well, Lisa, what am I supposed to do? Just sit here like on my hands and do nothing? Well, no. Okay. And I love the adage that I've heard before that says, ladies, let men be the hunters. Like, that's something they love, and that's something that they rise up into, and it's a challenge to them. Let them be the hunters, but don't be afraid to snap some twigs. So in that sense,
I love that. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to snap some twigs, because there is a role that you can play in being that open-hearted person toward a guy, being willing to have conversations with guys. You know what I did when I was dating? I just determined that the best way for me to get someone to date me was to play hard to get and act like I actually didn't like them, and then be super mysterious and elusive, and then that would make me more interesting.
Yeah.
You know what they did? They just moved on.
Yep.
And they found someone who was nicer than me, who was more open than me, who was kinder than me. And so I think, ladies, your best bet is to be in conversations with men, to be friendly. And again, not showing favorites. I believe that, this is a brother in Christ. Unless you declare your intentions on both ends, you shouldn't be acting like you're dating if you're not. But at the same time, there's a lot of freedom there to show similar interests in things, to be kind, to be friendly, to be the person who's like, telling your acquaintances, like, yeah, I would actually love to be dating right now, and I'm willing to go out on dates. The more you have a posture of willingness and openness, that opens the door for guys to be willing to take a risk, because they know that they probably won't get their hearts broken in the process.
Yeah. I think sometimes, especially in this day and age, I think guys are a little like scared to ask girls out. We've kind of lost. It's now seen as like old fashioned when a guy just asks a girl on a date. Nowadays, you have to Snapchat for 6 months and never actually say words to each other and just send pictures of your forehead.
Yeah,
for 6 months before maybe you ask a question or actually say hi at all.
Yeah. But this is where, guys, this is such a flex for you, because if you show intention here and you're willing to take a risk and put your cards on the table, you're going to be setting yourself apart from 85% of other guys. Yep. You're going to be that I always say, even when you go on a date, even if it's just coffee, pay for the girl's coffee. Just do the gentlemanly thing. And then I tell guys like, well, I met up with her and she was with a couple of her girlfriends and I thought we'd grab coffee. And I'm like, get their coffees too. Just make it work. Make it work. Because now you're just showing like leadership and ownership, and you're just in a protective stance toward these women who are sisters in Christ. But that's just honoring of them as women. And it just shows that you're willing to be that person who steps in, who takes the lead, who's willing to be all that. And again, it's from a humble posture. It's not from, I'm so amazing because I'm the man. It's just being humble. And I think that is just a great way for guys to win in this space, to be, men trust God by taking risks. Women trust God by being receptive to that and by being the person who is willing to wait. Guys, there is a riskiness to that. And women, sometimes you feel like waiting and being receptive is risky as well, but you're trusting God in both instances.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I hope a lot of people will listen to this specific episode. If they don't listen to any other episode,
Tell them it's about dating and people listen.
oh
Everybody
yeah,
gets crazy about that. Yep.
for sure. I think it is kind of funny. Like I was just sitting here thinking about all of like my close friends that I'm thinking of that have boyfriends. They will tell you like they ended up with those boyfriends because these are the men that actually like stepped up and asked them on a date,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of thought they were being sort of old fashioned in a way, but that's how they got the girl in the end.
Yeah.
Because they took the risk and they asked like, do you want to go on a date, and they truly like pursued it, and it worked out for everyone in the end. So
And that's why I said I mentioned this in chapel too. It's like, guys, you're not a player if you're just asking girls out. I mean, yeah, if you're intending to just string them along and have hearts littered behind you, I mean, that's
yeah,
not good on any level. But it's like you are in a season of life where you're supposed to be exploring who might God have for me as a mate. And so it's like you need to get to know women in order for that to happen. I think we've put too much weirdness on this
yeah,
idea of dating. And that's why I said, too, in chapel, ladies, be in a default position of saying yes. Unless this guy is like super creeper, borderline serial killer, and or does not exhibit qualities of a solid believer or a mature person, whatever. I mean, that bar should be, I don't say low, but you don't want a low bar, but you want an accessible bar of someone who
yeah,
is a growing believer in Christ. Because if this guy's a younger guy, he has a lot of growth still to do, and you might be part of that process. But it's just like, oh, let's go hands off and just be like, we're going to entrust this to God and see where it goes.
for sure. I think earlier we were speaking on the three different rings of
Mhm.
sort of relationships. I don't know, we were just focusing more on romantic relationships, but I think some other hard relationships to walk through are like friendships.
Mhm.
And I know like I struggle a lot in my life with friendships, like trying to figure out like should I be putting my energy into this relationship if it's not reciprocated? What does it mean to be Christ-like in this situation? And it was really funny you brought up those three rings. I didn't know that
Mhm.
other people did that, or that that was an actual like psychological
Yeah.
system. I remember last semester like vividly telling a couple of friends about I do sort of catalog people in that system for myself. I
Uh-huh.
tend to see things in black and white a lot. And so for me, like I have to know where people lie in my life. And I remember telling someone like, "Oh, I'm moving these people from the inner ring to an outer ring." And they
Mhm.
thought I was crazy. And
Mhm.
I was like, "No, I don't think I am."
Yeah.
And I'll stick by that. But what is some of your advice for navigating friendships? Do you think when friendships get hard, like how would you navigate that? Like, should you distance yourself? Should you keep pushing even when people don't reciprocate the same energy towards you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because one of the questions I get asked the most is some version of how do I make friends? How do I keep friends? How do I go deeper in friendship? How do I know when a friendship has run its course? Just
Yeah.
all these things where we assume that friendships should be so easy, but it's not. And so that we get frustrated. So, and just for clarification, so people know, these rings of friendship is just me saying not everyone can be in relationship with you at the same level at all times. We would implode if that happened. So we're going to have a close inner circle of people in our lives. We're going to have people that are maybe one ring out. We're going to have people outside of even that. And so we have to treat relationships in a way that is honoring of where that relationship is in our life. And some people should be closer to us. They're more trusted people. They're people that have earned that place. And other people maybe need to have more boundaries or just maybe not the time spent. So that said, when I talk about friendship, I think there are two things we have to think of just generally. One is some friendships are meant for a season or a certain purpose in your life, and then others are going to go the distance, and others are
Yeah.
going to take you throughout longer seasons of your life or throughout the entirety of your life. So again, we don't need to get angsty about like, oh, I have to cling to this person for my whole life, or I don't want to go do coffee with them because what if then 25 years later I still have to be their friend? Okay, so we don't need to worry about that. That said, as we're making friends, there's a certain amount of intention that needs to be given to like letting the relationship happen organically. If you are the person who's like, desperate, needy, pursuing someone of like, will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? Well, you're not going to have a reciprocity in that that's helpful. That said, I have one of my best friends who told me, I thought this was so just like mind blowing. She said, Lisa, every time I move to a new city, and she's single, I just start praying about who God would have me be a friend to. And I just really look for the Lord's guidance as to who should I invest in. Because otherwise it's kind of like, okay, what do I do? What do I look for? Should I just wait for this to happen? So that measure of intention and bringing God into the process is so important. That said, you have to realize, and I said this in chapel too, that if a friendship is really going to go deep and ultimately go the distance, you have to have friends in your life who are willing to be real with you and willing to be truth tellers in your own life. So, those friends that are going to tell you hard things if you need to hear them. And then the idea is you're not going to fly off the handle and take offense and be like, if you were my friend, you would never say anything bad to me ever. You're going to be the person that can receive that. And even if it might be something that you need to hear, even if it is something that is said with poor motives, or it's said in anger, or it's straight up sinning against you, you're still going to be able to preserve that friendship because, especially if you have Jesus at the center, you're able to move in and out of apology, forgiveness, forgiving offenses, all of that kind of stuff. But you have to, just as we do in our relationship with Christ, we have to be willing to make the investment in friendships. So you can't just be on a surface level forever and ever and think you're going to get anywhere. So I always recommend, there are different levels of questions you can ask of friends. You have to be that person who's a giver and not just a taker. Friendships need to go both ways. And so there might be, you might actually have some work cut out for you in really making solid friends and not being that person who, I remember the first time I had a friend who we got in a very serious fight. And it was something that earlier in my life, I probably would have ditched the friendship over, and I would have been like, I need to move on to the next one. But we actually slogged through it, and that was more to her credit than mine, if I'm being honest. We worked through it, and it was the first time I had come through a serious, serious disagreement and preserved the friendship on the other side, and it was that much richer for that. So there is some work in it. Sometimes we have to let a friendship go, and that is okay, but don't let it go without doing due diligence and doing some hard work and really loving that person like Jesus would love them and seeking to get to know them and explore who God has made them to be.
Yeah, that was a lot of good stuff. What would your advice be? I sort of run into this situation a lot. I always have since middle school. The first time it happened, I was in 7th grade, and I was, in my mind, best friends with this other girl in my grade. We'd talk every single day. She'd come over to my house, and I thought that, that was my best friend. Well, she was my best friend, but she had 20 more of me. 20 other friends that were sort of on that same level I was with her. And I guess I just needed more from the friendship. I guess I wanted her to feel the same about me I felt about her. And ultimately, we ended up not being friends anymore because she sort of pursued some other friendships. And now even in my adult life, I guess the way I would classify this is there's some people that are in my inner circle, but I'm not in their inner circle. Okay. So how would you navigate sort of friendships as an adult where maybe, that friendship holds more weight for you, but it doesn't hold as much weight for someone else?
Yeah. You wanted to have that best friend necklace where each of you have a half of it.
Yeah, she had 80 other halves.
She's got
I had the one.
I totally hear you. Okay, well, first of all, I think we have to recognize that there are different people, different personalities at play when it comes to friendship. So some people have a large capacity for friendship, and this is that classic extrovert who has all the time in the world, all the energy, for everyone in their sphere. And I would still argue that they can't be at the same level as everyone, but they seem to have more capacity for it. Whereas introverts do a lot better with just a few close friends. And that's kind of the way that they roll. Now, of course, this would all be easy if we weren't just assuming that everyone thinks and acts exactly as we do. So you have different personalities at play. So I would say, just as I say with dating, anytime you date someone, you have to have different periods in the relationship where you're defining it and you're kind of taking stock and being like, are we both on the same page? Is this
Yeah.
going anywhere? What does this look like? And having those honest conversations. Sometimes you have to have that in friendship as well, because she may show up if she has a high capacity for people. She may be being a pretty good friend to you, especially when you're together, because a lot of extroverts have the ability to be very present with the person they're with. They show up and they're good in the moment. But you might be someone that's like, I just really want to have a closer knit group of friends, or I want
Yeah.
this to go deeper on this level, and it's obviously something we can't do at that level. And so it might just be, it doesn't mean that you have to say, like, oh my goodness, you totally disappointed me, I need to cut you. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to, because again, then it becomes very consumeristic. Then it's just about, what is this person doing for me? Instead, let the relationship run its course. So rather than grasping onto her as being like, you need to be my person, this is, I knew you first, let it go where it goes. And in the meantime, be open, again, open handed to maybe another friend that God may have for you who wants to be more in that inner circle, kind of tight friendship with you. And again, I say, like, we have a whole lifetime to make and keep friends. We're probably going to lose some friends in the process too. So don't think that every friendship and every deep friendship that you have has to happen before you're out of school or before
Yeah.
because you'll have a lifetime ahead of you to see friendships grow and change, and for you to add new ones as well. So again, invest in it, but also be open-handed about it, that if God moves her in or out of your life, you're okay with that. But you're always, I'll say one other picture. I did this with my small group because, and this is a little bit of an illustration of friendship. We were talking about our small group and how we were pretty tight-knit and all that. And so it became the question of, well, should we invite anyone else in? Because we've got such a great thing going. Should we invite people in? And it was Beth Moore who said one time, really be tight-knit with your small group and link arms, but link arms facing outward, so that you're not linking inward and just being all about yourselves and becoming too insular. Link arms and be a tight group, but always face outward in case there's anyone that God is calling for you to invite into your circle, because you never know, that circle might need to be widened a little bit. It might need to morph a little bit, and that is totally okay.
Yeah. That was some really good advice. That was helpful for me, but hopefully helpful for everyone else too.
Absolutely.
Well, we're kind of coming to the end here. So like I said before, this is the See You at the Table podcast, kind of a little play on CU, Campbellsville University. So one thing we always do at the end of each episode is we ask for a table tip. So it can be a spiritual discipline that you practice, well, we should be practicing every day, but maybe a tip to help somebody walk in their spiritual discipline, or maybe a piece of wisdom you heard lately that helped you out a lot. Trent always says something to chew on. So what would your table tip be?
Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to give you guys one that I'm actually learning right now. I am in a season, so I mentioned this to some students after chapel. I'm in a season of transition in my career, and it's kind of open season. I don't know what God has for me next. My current job is going to be ending in less than 2 weeks, and so I'm just asking God what's next. So dovetailing with this transition is a very concerted season I am in regards to prayer. Mm-hmm. And I went to a prayer conference, and out of that, I joined a prayer cohort that's like a Zoom meeting with people I'm praying with, who are actually from a lot from my area, but then some even from other states. So all that to say, I'm saying this in a long roundabout way, but my tip is the biggest thing that I've learned about prayer recently is that God tells us to come to him messy and to come as little children. And the minute we show up in prayer and we think that we have to start with big flowery language, or we have to use that acronym ACTS of like, if I don't start with adoration and confession, then why am I even asking? It's like, just come to God. We think of Jesus welcoming the little children up onto his lap. And little children tug and tug and tug, and they say, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. They ask and they ask, and they're selfish and they're messy, and all they care about is them. Start there in prayer. Bring God into your day. The things that you want, whether it's that guy to ask you out, whether it's you need money to even make it through the weekend, whether you need something to happen in your family, all the things, bring them before God. Just do it. I started putting prayer cards together where I just have different things that I'm praying through, and I look at it, and that gives me my little prompt. I prayer walk at home. I have hiking trails near me. I've started doing that. God's word and connecting with God in prayer are the two biggest gifts we are given as believers. We way underutilize them. So get out there, start talking to God in a way that's real.
Yeah, that was really good. Well, thank you so much for being on campus today and for also coming on the podcast. We appreciate it so much, and we'll see you guys next time. This podcast is brought to you by Campus Ministry at Campbellsville University, where faith, testimony, and dialogue come together. Stay connected, stay inspired, and we'll see you at the table next time.